G'day everyone, welcome to another video. I'm going to be talking about today. We're going to do two parts to the torso, and that will be the mainly the abs, the abdominal area. So you've got the abs, and it's not just that. We're going to look at the obliques also, and these muscles, I believe, help you twist, straighten up your body, bend down. But these ones are pretty simple, I think, and they're very important muscles to include in your sketches or your figure drawings. You don't have to draw like, some people will draw these abs like bubbles, but they're not like that. Okay, so we're gonna figure out how to draw them, where they insert and originate. So we'll get right into it. I'll just clear this up to make it neat. And I've got some handy references here. So first of all, actually, we'll go into a subject, may have been last week when we were doing lats, but it's the serratus magnus. Now we delved on this a little bit. What they were these muscles here. And I didn't really show you a good example last week. You've got your scapula, right? I'm drawing from behind, and say that's the back of the ribs. And if I see through to the front neck hole there, and your arms, so you've got this scapula, remember? These scapula. And the origination of these serratus magnus is, if you didn't have that scapula there, you could see how it emanates from under the scapula. And then and thanks to this illustration, you'll see how it wraps around towards the front. Okay? And see it all sort of splaying out from under that scapula. Now, the serratus, the obliques, rather, these obliques, I'll show you the illustration I've got, that'll represent it better. So we've just seen our serratus magnus. This is this portion here, and this is the front, going towards the front of the rib. It's rotating to the front, and it shows us a good example again. Remember these the rib cage, it goes down like that. And if you draw an angle like this towards the corner of the rib cage, it starts to turn upwards towards the back. Right? Now, if your serratus magnus are connecting, remember they were like these long tube shapes connecting to the ribs. Okay? All the way up to near the shoulder. Now this is part of the serratus as well. Okay, so this is the important part. So remember this, the obliques will come from under there. So you'd have this sort of pattern, okay? But you wouldn't see it so far up in your drawings because you'd be covering it with your pecs, remember? Now these striations, or these connections from the obliques, will connect to a tissue along here. So it just sort of fans out. And then, this is a very long torso, but if you've got your pubic bone and you represent it, I'll represent it as a boxy shape there. I'll move this a little bit up. Oh, where am I? Oh, I can't do this. Jeez. Okay, I'll do it again, guys. Sorry. Let's erase this. Okay, so let's start again. So I've got this egg shape for the rib cage. And I've got that little guideline going from the pit to the corners of the rib cage. I've got the actual ribs coming around to the back. And you don't have to draw every single rib exactly, because if you're drawing for a medical illustration book, just in general with it, don't go too hard unless you really want to with the detail. Now, scapula. Okay, so emanating from there, we can see the serratus magnus fanning out like that, attaching to the bones of the ribs. And now, from around that bottom of the sternum, that's where I'd start to, because the obliques will connect to different bones, okay? Like so. This is very general, but this is where your abs would lie, around here. We'll simplify it later. I'm just going into detail so you understand. These are the striations from the oblique. That's the end of the rib, so it doesn't have anything more to connect to. So where does it connect to? Well, this portion connects to the abs, and we'll get into that soon. And see the side of this sort of bread basket? That's where I would connect the bottom portion of the obliques, okay? So to put it simply, we've got our bread basket of a pubic bone, got the rib cage, and from there, would draw striations like that, and down, attaching to the side of the pubic bones. And then, remember, you've got the serratus magnus. So the connection, you'd see about 3 or 4 in your drawings that aren't covered by the pecs, but it would come out like something like that, very simply. Okay, so if you need to go through that, it was a bit complicated, but if you need a refresher on that, just rewind it and play it again. And what I'll do now, and remember, they sort of starts where I just said at the bottom of the sternum there. This is where those attachments, you can't kind of see where the attachments are coming out. And the most prominent around here, I think. Remember that sort of guide we had? This is where you'd see most of those, the crossover, sort of finger locking of the serratus and the obliques. Now I'll move on to the abs. So I'm not going extremely in depth because I remember when I did these anatomy sort of studies, a lot of people go real so far into it, just get an idea of it. And then if you really want to understand it almost to the level of a medical student, just buy a anatomy book or go online and look. What's especially important is to look up the origins and insertions of the muscles, okay? That's the most important part, I think. Okay, so we've got this old diagram here. I'll go into the obliques again, and then we'll get into the abdominal area, this area here. Okay. So again, this is good practice as well. Maybe you do this in your own time, but try and superimpose the muscles on a skeleton. Okay, so remember, we've got the serratus muscles fanning out from under that scapula there and coming around to the front. Okay, and I'll do a till about there. And this, see this point I mentioned before, the sternum, this is where a lot of action happens, around that line if you looked at it horizontally. Okay, and then from there, we know the obliques will attach here, and also maybe it's good to start with the, just where the rough area of the abs would be. So the abs are sort of like a long band with muscles, okay, going from the sternum to, this is the origin insertion. They attach to the ribs up here, and then to the base of that, well, the pubic bone down there in the center. Look at that. Okay. Now, why did I put that in? We're going to look at how the obliques attach to that. So the obliques, they see they'll start like that, and each bit of it will keep going, attaching to the ribs until there's no more ribs, and then it makes its way and attaches to the pubic bone. Okay. And the other bit attaches, the side part attaches to the abdomen. And there's like this white sheath around here that the muscle is attached to. Okay. And on the other side, let's practice that. So serratus magnus would be attaching to the bones, coming out, remember, from behind under the scapula. And then you've got your I think there's about 4 ribs that the obliques don't attach to, but it attaches to all these other ribs, the lower parts. Okay, and then remember the insertion is here, and it also attaches to the abdomen. This is the abs. And it should actually go like that because the attachment, or the insertion point, is there. It doesn't go all the way down there like I just showed you there. Okay. And how does the interlock look? Remember, from here to about the corner of the abs is where you'll see about 3 or 4 of these interlocks. And they're especially important for your superhero figures if you wanted to exaggerate their musculature. We'll try another one. We'll look at the back. Yep, that's right. So say the insertion. I'll leave that there actually. We know the insertion is around here. And on the other side, it goes, wraps around. If you wanted to just, okay, we'll continue as we did. I was just going to simplify it, but this is the serratus from under the scapula, remember? And then the obliques connecting, I'm drawing as if it's connecting to the front parts. And then at the back, it'll continue connecting to the ribs. And it'll go like this. Okay. So what I was about to say before is if you wanted to simplify it, just draw it coming out. Give it volume, remember? And it's attaching to the pubic bone on the sides. And remember our lats. Our lats, if this bone came out, and when this is behind, and at the front, remember it comes from the front, attaches in the middle, and then goes to the other one, and they cover the bottom of the scapula. And then remember it came down and attached close to the sacrum is that big triangle down here. Okay, and that's how it would attach. So you've got, I'll make this point a bit clearer. So you've got the attachment for the lats, and then you've got attachment for the obliques, all on this pubic bone. Hopefully that makes sense. And remember also that this lat covers everything. So the obliques would be coming from under it over here. Now let's have a look at the actual abs, the center region, the stuff that a lot of people work out to make stick out. Okay, so remember that long band, okay? That's very simple like this. So remember you've got volume, it'll come in, your stomach can come out. And I'll draw it along here. And you see at the bottom here, some people like to represent it as a kind of, I don't know what shape you'd call that. Just something with a rounded end and a bit flatter on top. Down the center here is where you'd have your separation. So you've got, I think, 8 abs. Some people prefer to have like 10, and it's very rare that people have 12. But in general, people will have 8 abs. And all right, this is important too. Where do you find these separate abs? This, see, from the bottom of the rib cage, if I made a flowing line to the other side, separate that section, okay? And then your belly button about here, because it's going to be about halfway between the end of the rib cage and your aces, I think it is. This point here. About there is where you'd find the other set of abs, and then the lowest set would take up the leftover area down to the crotch, down to this bone here, okay? There's actually the crotch there, but this bone here. So it appears that they get bigger as it goes down. So if I was to put the belly button here, we know a set lies around here. There's another set here, and it gets a bit bigger, and then the biggest. And your abs, they don't go like bang like that. They curve. Okay. Sort of like arches there. And now this is, people get confused on how to really render these separate abs for their superheroes. You've got a light coming from here. It's just logic, okay? If you've got your light coming from here, and each ab, say it was like a volume like a ball, then the light hits here and it gets into shadow like that. So simply follow that rule all the way down. And remember, it's not exactly a sphere, but this is where you'll use your artistic liberty and also what you've studied from observing the figure, how it should look. And if you really wanted to get like, make him look like RoboCop, oh, change the color here. And look at that. It's really getting shiny, but it gives it volume, doesn't it? Light, mid, and shadow. Now I'm getting going a bit too far with that. What else have we got here? I've shown you the example of that. I'll erase all this and we'll put it into practice. Okay. So as you know, I like to use old statues because the light doesn't lie here. In painting, sometimes the artist might change things, but the light and shadow doesn't lie on these examples with statues, I mean. Okay. How about we do it a simple way, and then we'll make it a robot shape, a squarish shape. And it's something I encourage you guys to do. I keep on saying is practice both methods. So we're going to do one with the box shape, and then we'll do one with the egg shapes. Okay. So the box shape here, I can see a bit of the side. If I impose on this, maybe I can show you what I mean. Okay. So I've got it a bit wrong. I'm sort of scratchy with my drawings, but I sort of like the feeling out the I mean, it's like, I think it's called pentimenti, but you're scratching it out and then finding which line works best. Okay. And if you want, just practice doing very simple drawings like that. That'd be a good, I think I should practice more of that too. Okay, so down here, we'll have our, see, you've got that, see, that's where the obliques lie. This is important to see, this on this belt line. So I'm representing that area. And why is this, you know, in the Egyptian times, I think the statues were very front on, like, look, just think they were representing importance or something regal. And they were just statues that were very front on, okay? And then in the Greek times, things got interesting. People started and this will make your drawings more interesting. They started, like they're doing in this example, bending the figure. Okay. So one bit's going that way, and the other bit's going this way. All right, and that was a sort of revolutionary at the time. But we don't really consider that too much. But it makes the poses a lot more interesting for people to look at. And to practice, I guess. Now, remember just using it as reference, not copying exact. About midway down between the top and the bottom half is the belly button. So I'll start with the the abdominals. Okay, so let's say that that insertion point is down there. Now, important, observe the reference. It's not just going straight like that. This is nothing here. Okay, it's not just connecting straight like that. Look, it's going like that and then coming around. And this is more stretched. And this is one thing, I believe it was Stephen Houston, I learned this from his tutorials, is in these, you call this a dynamic pose, because one bit's going one way and the other bit's going the other way. This is just a front on. So if you want to understand it, look at the shoulder line there, and then this pubic line is going the opposite way. So I'm getting really far into the corner here. This is an important thing to remember, everyone. So I'll go into it. I think I'll set this section for here. So look along there. You've got the shoulder line. Along here, what's the axis of that pubis? Like that. And if you wanted to make it extreme, this is when figures get interesting, when you really push and exaggerate the pose or the dynamicism. Okay. And I was talking about Steve Houston. You may know of him already. Awesome teacher. You got to check out his videos. And his artwork, geez, was incredible boxes. Not boxes as in cute, but he likes the sport of boxing, so he paints a lot of boxes in their action, throwing punches, etc. Okay, so here's a very important lesson he said was there's always a stretch on every limb, and you'll notice it. Maybe I'll do a video on the stretch and the squash, but there's a squash side. Okay? So stretch, squash. Now, this is our stretch side, this is our squash side. And then if we look at the abs, we've got this stretched area. And this area is squashing in because of the figure's tilt. Okay? So it sort of looks like a large beam now. And we can see here, this is the rib cage. You see those two bits of the abs we talked about before? Remember this? There's two up here that sit around the rib cage. And then another set below the rib cage, and one final set going to the crotch area. So this is one set, the second set, all within that rib cage. And then you see a little bit of that third set, and at the bottom, connecting to the pubic area, is that last set, and you'll see a tiny, tiny bit of shadow. And where's our light coming from? It seems, if you've got your light, there's a strong bit of light there and there. It seems to be coming down like that, and you could exaggerate that shadow if you wanted to, okay? Now, this is a really good example to study from. So look at statues when you can. Just see all these shadows. They'll give you hints on how to finish off the figure. So if we go back to here, our sketch. So little bits there. Okay, I'm exaggerating this. And then one to about the belly button, and then the biggest set of those pair of abs down towards the bottom, the crotch. Okay, now that was a long example there, but hopefully you got a lot out of it. And we're not done yet. We've still got to add our obliques. So remember this little trick? The ribs coming down, going back up there, down, coming back up here. And I usually do this just to guide me. And once you guys get really good at things, you're not going to have to do all these little guides. You'll just know off the top of your head from so much practice where things lie. But I like to put it as a guide, and also to show you to use these little tools to help you along the way. Okay. Serratus magnus connecting to the ribs from the back, coming from the back. And then remember our obliques coming down this way. They're not going that way. They're going towards where they're supposed to connect to on the abs, the side of the abs there. Okay. So that's the front bit connected, and the side part is connected. I'm drawing as if you can see through that muscle. Now to simplify it here, just draw straight down. And then, okay, so I'm going to show you this squash. If you can't, you can see it in the statue, but if you really want to push it in your drawing, just draw a crease there, you know? Okay. Not don't go too hard, but it's a good thing in your figure drawing just to push things sometimes, just to emphasize the squash. Now, say I've got it like that. Okay. Now along here, the belt line, you can see the shadow. They've just really pushed the shadow there. Not so much here. This whole, and then, okay, now I'll go a step further. Let's say we've got our humerus. And say we want his arm going up and one going like that. Remember your pecs, and let's have the collarbone as well. So the pecs, we've got one portion from the front third of that collarbone coming out of the manubrium. And then we've got the sternal part of the pecs. Okay. And then it comes down a tiny bit. And if I nipple around, remember around that guideline. So here the guide is here, the nipple will be about there. it's not stretching that pec as much. So you see a bit more definition. Okay. I think that's making sense to you guys. Now, I've really haven't pushed this too far, but if I was going to make a superhero, there you see where these bits intersect. Okay. Now we'll move on to one more way I would like you guys to practice, and it is to start inventing. I mean, you can get good at copying figures, but you really need to, especially now you're getting to know the figure quite a bit, start playing with what you know. Okay, so you know that, okay, I didn't show you the egg example in the last that last statue, so let's just, from memory, let's play with eggs. Okay, and um I'll maybe change it up a little bit, maybe um put it, say it's like this. I've got the basket down here. I said we'd do eggs, but this basket you can represent as half an egg, and about the mid area is where the crotch, the bottom of the abs would connect. Okay, and just play with this. Okay, so that's going that way. Yeah, I'll make him sort of bend forward so his neck would come out there. And if you to represent the rib cage, I'll put in those guidelines to be like that. And maybe his head be looking. I'm drawing these axis lines to help me understand which way my figure will be looking. So the neck's there, okay? And just for fun, let's put in an arm. I'm not gonna draw the whole figure. I'll just put in this collarbone and another collarbone around there. Okay, let's lay in these abs. So if I generalize this down here, it would be like a beanbag shape. And this is something that the Disney animators would use these tricks to, well, what would you say, to abbreviate their figures. And they had a lot of, they're very dynamic, okay? So say, I don't know, what's a freaky mouse, but that would be how they draw a lot of cartoon characters, and you can practice that as well. Now, I've got my guides. I'm going to put a line down here. This is a guide telling me, you've got this volume and then there's nothing. So it sinks in and it'll come out again. Let's put in that washboard ab. And look at that ab. I'm not drawing every single muscle. I'm just abbreviating it. And this is where I reckon I'd find a bit of a squash, okay? Now, before we go on, let's add in let's put in our Serratus magnus. I'm putting those guides for the ribs. and the serratus coming out from the back, and I'm just emphasizing some volume under each rib. Now, remember, towards the abs is where the obliques will come, and they'll connect to every rib cage until it ends. And then it has no choice but to go all the way down to the pelvic bone. And I'll push the shadow there. So this would look something like that. I'll draw 2 or 3. Okay. See how I had it like that? That doesn't flow well. I want it to flow. And remember about rhythm, everyone. Just try and see how it would work for your drawing. Make it look something nice to look at, that believable at the same time. Okay. Now, if you really wanted to, remember this egg, and we've got the abs. There'll be a set up here, 2 small sets, 2, 1 going around the belly button area, and then the big one down the bottom here. Okay. And then if our arm is over here, we've got the portion of the pecs coming from collarbone, and also another portion coming from the sternum here. All right. So if I erase, I'm gonna make this better eraser. Something hard there. Okay. A lot better. So that would be covering all that stuff we had on the ribs. Okay. And then on the other side. Another thing, it's good to practice these, but remember also, you don't have to look for every single muscle. Like, you can put in a hint at it there, but you don't have to always just actively search for each single, I'm going to draw the serratus all the way up there. Just hint at things. Remember, you don't have to go too crazy with it. Just do what will get you over the line and make it believable. Now, I'm missing the oblique on this side. So if I created a box shape, I just want to see how it would sort of look coming to the other side. So I know that the obliques point towards the ab, and then they connect there like that. So I'm drawing these little bits that were supposed to connect towards the ab, and then we've got how we draw the other bit into the pubic area. So with all of that, I think, I'm trying to keep these videos short, but we're on about almost 45 minutes, and there was only a few quick examples. I'd encourage you to watch it again. This is how I learn. Sometimes you miss things out on the first time round, and they're important parts. So just go through it again. Once you've been through it with me once, so the next time round, go through it and actually draw with me. And after you've done that and understood a little bit, do your own research, like supplementary research. And also, if you're spending time drawing from reference, spend maybe an equal amount of time just doodling, and playing with, see how I have this Disney character, just play with that and see, oh, what can I make it, add to it to make it, turn it into a bit of a muscular um, Disney character. So, things like this, uh, where the abs are, where the pecs are, uh, where how the obliques lie, um, you know, your arms, they're covered by the delts. Just play, and that's what art should be. Just play, enjoy, and learn while you're enjoying. Don't, I know a lot of artists will, some people that really um, get so frustrated. You just have to remember that this should be a hobby, something fun, and don't torture yourself. Learn through play. Okay, so this is what I mean by just doodling. If you're sitting at the dentist, have a notepad on you and just practice. This is what I do when I go to restaurants. I bring a small notepad, and while my girlfriend's talking at me, I'll just do like little poses, the simple ones, and then add on quick abbreviations of anatomy. So, and it really all adds up, everyone. Just do your mileage, and everything will start to fit towards the end. But the thing is, with art, there is no end. You just keep learning little hints forever and ever. And all these things do add up and make you a better artist. Sometimes you learn a new thing and it is not good. It sort of sets you back. You move forward a few steps and then you go back a few steps, but that's part of the journey. And that's what makes it more worthwhile, because you put in the effort and persevere. So don't stop, keep practicing. And if you have any questions, ask them in the comments, or I used to have an Instagram, but I got rid of that. Yeah, just ask me in the comments and tell me if I made any mistakes, what I can improve on, and also any suggestions of videos that you want to see in the future. But I'll continue on next week, perhaps with maybe the glute area, and then we can move down towards the legs, and then that'll be that. We'll just practice together. So until next time, have fun, and goodbye for now.